So, during these lecture sessions, that is the second lecture sessions, I will be discussing inventory classification schemes. There are the different types of the classification schemes that we'll discuss one by one, and one important say the classification scheme is ABC analysis. So, what is the methodology you adopt for carrying out ABC analysis, that also we will discuss. So, mainly we will be focusing inventory classification schemes, and the second one is in these particular lecture sessions I will elaborate, I will discuss the ABC analysis. Now, what we have mentioned, if you refer to my previous lecture sessions, you come across an important point called the importance of an item. So, importance of an item can be explained from say 6 different perspectives, and against each perspective you need to propose a classification scheme. So, how many classification schemes you have? Usually in almost all situations there are 6 classification schemes altogether you can adopt for the inventory items in selective inventory management. Okay, and for each scheme you have a purpose, and the one purpose is common to all these schemes, that is I need to have the most perfect and the best inventory control systems for the most important items. So, that is the uniform rule. I repeat that I must have the best inventory control systems or the most perfect inventory control systems for the most important items. Okay. So, this is your objective, that is one single purpose. So, you must be very careful in proposing a particular classification schemes, and any such scheme is to be developed explicitly as well as most perfectly. An organization may opt for one or more of these schemes. So, it is most unlikely that a company is following all these 6 classification schemes routinely or blindly. In majority of the cases you will find that 3 maximum, okay, the schemes classification schemes are used, and other 3 may not be considered important in a given situation, right. So, an organization may opt for one or more of these schemes depending on the priorities of the perspectives to be considered. So, you must have a priority listing, and as per this priority list you go for developing these classification schemes. Rational judgment, the next point you must remember that these schemes, many of these schemes cannot be determined explicitly through objective analysis. So, you have to apply in many cases based on your knowledge, based on your expertise, to use them. You need to use your say subjective judgment in defining the importance of an item. Okay, for majority of the cases there may not be explicit objective analysis. So, the rational judgment and assessment of current problems related to inventory control plays an important role. in selection of appropriate number of classification schemes in a given situation. So, this point you please keep in mind, that the rational judgment and assessment of current problems. Okay. So, this is a must, particularly when you deal with an inventory control system. Okay. So, this we apply, later on you will come to know. Now, there are the 6 ways you can define the importance of an item. So, available classification schemes are named as. So, first these classifications schemes are to be known by their names or by their titles. The first one is known as HML analysis. H stands for high unit price, M stands for medium unit price, and L stands for low unit price of an item. So, HML analysis, whenever you mention, that means you are referring to the unit price of an item, and you have classified them under 3 categories. So, the items classified as per their cost or price per unit. If it is an internal, say, supply case, obviously, against each item you have the unit production cost. So, that value you get, and then for different such items you have different values of unit production cost. So, you say that among all these items which are being produced within the company, self supply case, I will say, or I will judge an item by its unit production cost, and the item which is having the maximum unit production cost will get the maximum importance. So, that item is referred to as H item. So, this is for the internal supply case, self supply case. For the outside supply case, what do? You get this item from an outside supplier. So, you have raised the purchase order, and in the purchase order an unit price is mentioned, and the unit price you have negotiated, and ultimately that is the agreed upon unit price. So, if you find for an item this unit purchase price is very high or very low, so you say the item is classified as H or item is classified as L. Is it okay? So, H stands for high, M stands for medium, and L stands for low. So, this system is applicable for inventory control at the department level, not at the operations level, at the department level. That means at the department level you get these items from the stores. Okay, so, the first, suppose it is an outside supply case, so it is supplied to the stores, and then by placing and the requisition, okay, from the production department, you get the item supplied from the stores. So, obviously, at the department level, that means when you get this item from the production purpose, you are aware of that that this item may be a very high price item or low price item. So, if it is an highly priced item or high priced items, so you give maximum importance those items. Is it okay? So, applicable for inventory control at the department level. Now, the next important analysis is referred to ABC analysis. This is very common. It is when you make a survey of say varieties of manufacturing organizations, or for that matter any say any organizations, what you may come across that almost in all cases all these companies they have been using ABC analysis. Whether they have been using the other classification schemes that you may not know, but one thing you must you will be aware, or you know with certainty, that ABC analysis in all likelihood is being used. And many a time what happens that in the name of ABC analysis, actually the company may be performing HML analysis. So this is point to be noted at this stage. Is it okay? When they say it's an ABC analysis, but when you actually start probing that what kind of probing the systems, you may come across that this is not an ABC analysis, actually it is an HML analysis. So what is ABC analysis? Items classified as per their annual usage value. That means if the annual usage value is considered very high, the item is considered to be A class item. If the annual usage value for an item is considered not that high, it is at the medium level, so that item is referred to as B class items. And similarly, you compute annual usage value for an item and you say comparatively, obviously relatively, that annual usage value for that item is not that high, or not that say at the medium level, but it is at the low level relatively speaking. Then you brand these items as a C class items. Okay. So what you need to do, you need to measure the annual usage value. So what is this annual usage value? This is very, very simple. That means you get this data, what is expected annual consumption. So this consumption or the demand may vary. Is it okay? So you get this the data easily from your information system, and for a given item you get this data, that is the annual consumption in physical units or the demand, and for each unit you know what is this unit price or the unit production cost. So if you multiply these two, you will get the annual usage value. So there are three types of the items under this classification scheme. A is a high class item, high say high A is an item which is considered having high annual usage value. B is a medium class item having annual usage value at the medium level, and the C class items are having say the low level of annual usage value. Whereas A items require strict control. This point to be noted, the strict control with its stock out probability held at the minimum level. Okay. So what will happen, that if you lose control on its stock out occurrences, so even the A class items, that means which is regularly used, that is why its consumption amount or the demand level is very high. So it may affect the production systems, the performance significantly in a negative way. Okay. So as you know that there is the close relationship between the inventory control systems and the production control systems. So many a time the inventory control system is discussed or is analyzed, okay, with reference to the production systems and production control. So obviously, if you lose control on A class items, it might directly affect the efficiency as well as the production rate of the production systems or manufacturing systems as a whole. C items do not need much control. Okay, you exclude them from say right now, or say the maybe 1 year, maybe for the next 1 year or the 2 years, you continue with the existing systems. Okay, you don't need to bother about the C class item at this point in time. Whereas for the B class items, you may need tight control, but not that strict control you require. You need lesser tight control. Okay, so this is the basis. So next important analysis, the classification scheme we refer to in majority of the cases, that is the VED analysis. Now, in the VED analysis, items are classified as per their criticality. That means this point to be noted within quote, that the criticality. That means this item is considered very critical to a production process. So the criticality, this term is to be defined in clear and explicit term. Now there are three types of items you come across as per this analysis called VED analysis. First one is the V class items. V means vital. How do you define the vital? That means here is a condition which means that without which, that means if this particular item is not available, okay, or it's not available in acceptable condition, it's suppose it gets damaged, what will happen? That means the whole production process stops, or the entire the plant shuts down. Suppose the main transformer to the power line of a plant stops functioning. What will happen? That means the entire production plant stops producing. So obviously the transformer is considered to be very vital. Is it okay? So you need to identify such items from the list of items, inventory items, and you mark them as vital. This is the definition. Now the next category is E type. What is E? We use a term called essential. What is essential? Essential means the item, that means if this item is not available, that means what will happen? Efficiency of production process is significantly affected. You can run the machine, but with lesser the spindle speed. Getting my point? So for the time being, and you just cannot continue forever. Maybe one day or the next one day or 1 week, you may run the system. Is it okay? But with a lesser production rate. But that also you cannot continue with this condition for the longer period of time. There could be severe damage to the systems, and if it fails, then there could be irreparable damage. So the risk is very high. So these items you need to identify, and they are referred to essential. So this is the definition. What is D? D is desirable, without which there may not be immediate loss of production. You can manage, or there could be you are waiting for a substitute. Is it okay? The substitutes are made available. So there are three types of items under this analysis. First one is the V, vital. The second one is the E, that is the essential, and the third one is the D, that is the desirable. So applicable, this analysis is applicable for inventory control of the spare parts. Okay, maybe for even for the MRO items. You know what is an MRO items. So the machinery spares, usually even if it is less costly, but its supply or its availability is to be guaranteed. So for the vital items, you first check what its existing inventory control policy, and whether this policy needs change or not. Okay, so this is the basis. The next important classification scheme is FSN analysis. This analysis also widely means it's adopted throughout the industries. Items classified as per their consumption rate. So if the consumption rate is very high, that you have to define, in a given situation which is considered to be very high. Maybe you say that if the consumption rate is 1000 units and more per hour, this is considered to be fast moving, and that is your definition. Also, suppose you say that every hour the consumption rate for that item is around 100 units per hour. So, that is considered to be slow moving, and the non moving means it is anybody's guess. Sometimes the 5 units you are using, sometimes 10 units, sometimes no units at all. So, ultimately what happens that after a few time periods, you may find that these items are not at all used. So, they are declared as non-moving items. There could be many reasons of non-moving items. Later on, we will discuss the excess inventory model. So, we will specifically identify or will specifically highlight the various kinds of the reasons or the situations where this you may have the non-moving condition for the items. Now, this analysis is applicable when proper arrangement of stocks in stores and for distribution and handling necessary. So, this is the point to be noted. In many instances, control of non-moving or dead stock. So, they are referred to as the dead stock. Okay. The dead stock may become a very serious problem and a priority problem to handle by management. So, in many cases you will find, I have already pointed out in the introductory the lecture sessions, I have already pointed out that in many organizations the materials management executive, majority of his or her time is spent on controlling this dead stock. Okay. So, obviously you must have an acceptable FSN analysis, okay, or a valid FSN analysis for your items. The next important classification scheme is SDE analysis. S stands for the scarce, mostly imported items, and and they may be in short supply, okay, and very expensive to be imported from foreign countries. D stands for difficult to procure, that means mostly to procure from a distant place or location. So, the logistics could be a problem, and so the lead time, you may lose control on the lead time, and in many cases suppose this item is very vital. That means as per the VD analysis, you say this is vital, a spare. It is not that expensive, but then this item is to be imported, and so to be imported from a place which is a distant place, and the lead time, control of lead time is not guaranteed. That sort of situation you come across. And the last category is the E category item. That means you say those items are branded as easy to procure class, mostly from local market, means just even with a telephone call you can get the item supplied to your workplace within hours, even though C2C through purchasing also, even through C2C, computer to computer purchasing. Now, here one important aspect I should highlight, that is if you adopt the JIT based manufacturing system. So, if you adopt JIT based manufacturing systems, so and particularly at the shop floor, if you adopt the Kanban system. So, later on we will highlight, we will discuss these aspects in the later weeks. you will find that the lead time of the supply can be substantially reduced. Okay, and what you will find that as the more supplies per unit of time are guaranteed, so you may have the inventory level becoming lower, and you get them supplied through adopting simple procedures of purchasing, applicable to a situation where a large number of items and raw materials need to be imported or procured following stringent procedure with high lead time. Okay, high lead time. Next one is the XYZ analysis. So this is also an important analysis you carry out, because one of the objectives of the inventory control system is to reduce or minimize the overstock amount. Items classified as per their closing inventory value. So X stands for high inventory values, Y stands for medium inventory values, and Z stands for low inventory values. Later on we will come to know the procedures used for valuation of inventory. Is it okay? So at any point in time for a given item, if the inventory value is very high, it is referred to as X. If the value is considered medium, relatively speaking, it is referred to as the Y class items, and if it is considered low, then it is referred to as the Z class of items. So this classification is applicable when overstock and disposal or liquidation of items. So this is the point to be noted. Sometimes we use the term called writing off. So disposal or liquidation of items is a serious problem. Okay, mostly the non-value items, non-moving items, and non-value items. So these two are very critical problems in many organizations, and a priority for inventory control by management. That means it becomes a priority. So forget about other classification schemes. You may come across a situation where you start with XYZ analysis. Is it okay? Immediately you conclude that essentially the company is facing problem in disposing of say non-moving items or say the dead stock. Usually in majority of the cases, ABC analysis along with two more analysis, either VED and FSN or VED and SDE are routinely used. And as I have already mentioned, that ABC is very common. It is imperative that the exact method of analysis for each classification scheme is in place, for which appropriate stepwise methodology with required databases is to be developed. So this point is to be noted. And now I'll just in the next 2 to 3 minutes of time, I will be just referring to a typical method which you may use for carrying out ABC analysis. Okay. So what kind of methodology you use for carrying out ABC analysis? So this methodology consists of a number of steps. So what are these steps? In the first step, what you do? Collect the list of n number of items, n. So that you have to specify. It could be 100, it could be 1000, or it could be 10,000, it could be 100,000. So that you have to select what is the possible value of n. Collect the list of n number of items and information on unit price. So this information you can collect, that is referred to as CUI, and annual consumption SI for each item I. Step 2, determine the annual usage value for each item. Okay, so you may refer to your information systems, the databases. So what you get for item I, the annual usage value is SI into CUI. Is it okay? So that is the annual usage value in monetary terms. Then what you do? in step 3, you rank the annual users values of all the n number of items in descending order. That means the first value comes first, the next value comes next, like this. So, this is to be arranged in descending orders. Then in step 4, express the annual users value of each item as a proportion of the total annual users value of n number of items. Okay. For item I, for example, the percentage is, or the proportion is, SI/CUI divided by sigma of SI/CUI. I varies from 1 to n. This is the total users value for all the n number of items, and so this the proportion you will calculate. Then in step 5, you cumulate the proportion of annual users value for all ranked items. Okay. And then in the step 6, plot the cumulative proportion of annual users value versus proportion of the items considered. On plotting, the nature of the curve is known. So, this exercise you do. And step 7, decide on the proportion of A, B and C class items. That means, when the curve is plotted, now looking at the curve, you decide that what is the proportion of A, what is the proportion of B and what is the proportion of C. And the number of items classified as A or classified as B or classified as C. And obviously, the corresponding cumulative proportions of the annual users values for all the class of items, that means A, B, C will be known. For example, it may be observed that the 10% of the items contribute to 70% of the total users value A items. Usually it happens. That means these are considered to be the non-trivial or important items contributing substantially to the annual users value. Okay, total annual users value 70% may be the case. They are referred to as the A items. Next 20% of the items contribute to 20% of the total annual users value. This is just an example I am providing. So, in a typical case, these values might change. That these items are considered to be B class items, and the rest 70% of the items contribute to only 10% of the total annual users value. So, they are referred to as the C class items. So, later on we will discuss with numerical examples A, B, C and other kinds of analysis. Thank you.